Okay, hi everybody and welcome to our 26th of February Scrutiny Committee. Great to see so many people here and members of the public as well, and councillors not on the committee joining us, so you're all very, very welcome. Special welcome to Councillor Pearl for this election and for subbing for us today, so you're very welcome, sir, and good to see you. Any apologies, Lucy?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Bernard with Councillor Webber as substitute, Councillor Graham with Councillor Pearl as substitute, Councillor Cork with Councillor Rosen as substitute, and also from Councillor Cross.
Okay, there's no substitute there, I don't think, is there? Right, thank you. Okay, we would expect some declarations of interest at this point, I think. So on item 4, declarations of interest. Jonathan.
Yes, thank you. I'm obviously a member of Wymondham Town Council. I would just say I haven't really been involved in this work hitherto, and I'm sort of approaching this with an open mind.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rosen, thank you.
Yes, similarly, I am a member of Wymondham Town Council, but I don't think that gives me an interest greater than anybody else. And I'm the member for North Wymondham, so I don't actually cover the area of either Ketts Park or Berwick Park.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Everyone else okay? Right, we'll go on to the minutes from the 12th of February. Quick look through those, please. Normally pretty straightforward. Is that okay with everyone? I'll take that silence as a stunning endorsement of the minutes, but they are done really well, so thank you. Right, with no further ado then, we'll get on to the first of the two main events today, which is the call-in, and really grateful to see people coming in, and you're very, very welcome, guys, to come and do this, so thanks very much. And, you know, we're as informal as we can be, so if you get tongue-tied or you misspeak or you get stuck, just take a moment, it's absolutely fine, okay? But we're really grateful to you for taking the time to be part of this really important process, which is obviously dear to our hearts. So I'm going to hand over to your group now. Now, you have only got 5 minutes total between you, but you can come in later on to ask questions, so bear that in mind as well. Yeah, okay. So we're expecting just the councillors to calling the item at this stage, if that's okay. Do you want to come in there, Suzanne? Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that we do have two potential residents as well who would like to comment. Do we need to declare that, I think, now, don't we?
No, we're not quite there yet, but when we do that, the residents will have a chance to make points and ask questions later on.
Right, okay, fair enough.
We're all a bit new to this, yeah. So when you're ready, do you want to, we'll start the clock and do your 5 minutes?
All right.
Right.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, great, that's when I had a clock in front of me, I didn't want to get involved in any technology. Right, when you're ready, guys, and thanks again.
Thank you very much, thanks, Chair. We have grave concerns on the mechanism used for this allocation of funding, originally intended for Sealfield, and the long drawn out affair this has become almost 10 years down the line. This money was allocated to South Wymondham and specifically for the residents around the Alders and Birchgate development for a community building. It's untrue to say that Wymondham Town Council did not want the original building, as highlighted by Councillor Carslock and Cabinet. But when people started to move into the development, it became very clear there was no appetite for a community building of any kind. And the resident survey by SNC showed there was big support for landscaping instead. It's interesting to note there was a previous survey to this in March 23, centering around Berwick Recreational Park, yet this was not included as an option in the SNC survey. As local district councillors and town councillors, we have lobbied SNC long and hard for the commuted sum to be allocated to Berwick to enhance its free facilities and green space. Berwick needs an upgrade, and Town Council has accordingly committed $250,000 to that. I've been lobbied by parents and young people who would rather have alternative facilities to football, because there are ample examples of that at Ketts. And it should also be noted that I was spoken to by local police who warned that there are county lines operating at Berwick and suggested improving the park could disrupt this. I'd like to remind everybody that the revamp of this was supported by all Wymondham district councillors. And the plan for Berwick itself and associated costs for the revamp was a direct result of a conversation myself, our town clerk, and Director of Place Phil Courtier had on the 18th of July. Phil advised that a business plan would be beneficial if we hope to secure money for this project. So to this end, our clerk worked hard and produced an excellent report, duly sent to me on the 3rd of September last year. On the 16th of January, we heard that the developer and SNC had signed a deed of variation to release money, but this came a day after I asked for this matter to be called in, and a week after the Cabinet decision which we're challenging today. So there was no information provided to local district councillors or the town council as to the content or decision. As a legal agreement, surely this should have been a key decision made in an open and transparent way. Carzok and Phil Courtier at Cabinet said that £427,758.46 was to be allocated to improving facilities at Ketts. The remaining money, up to 250k, towards Browick, but note that the sum says at least is not at who were elected to serve. Cabinet took the decision without the necessary detail for an informed discussion, and this was a failure to demonstrate just how the proposed sum provided fair compensation for the Silverfield communities and a failure to consider Browick for major funding. Also, how does the money for Ketts Park, how is that when you compare it to the fact that local government reorganisation is coming along down the line? Why invest in something which might be gone anyway? I think South Windham residents deserve to see investment in a facility that is at least in the same ward where they live as well. So to sum up, the Cabinet did not have the necessary information to make an informed key decision. Why was a vital resident survey ignored, with the Cabinet relying only on one survey, with questions weighted in favour of Ketts Park and excluding Browick as an investment? Why was there no information or business case presented to Cabinet on how Ketts Park would be enhanced, and why did Town Council have to provide one? And why should SNC invest taxpayers' money in an existing facility given the uncertainty on local government reform? Help us to fund a free-to-use facility for the benefit of residents, young and old, and not just an income-generating scheme for South Norfolk Council. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Does anyone who's not on the committee want to present evidence later on? Let's not ask questions, but actually add to the evidence. It's unusual that you would, but you've got the chance if you want to. This doesn't mean you can't ask questions. I think that's probably a no, isn't it? Because your case has been given, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. Okay. Right, in that case, I'm going to go to, is Kim going to lead this one? So Councillor Carsott to lead. This is the other side now in terms of evidence. Then we'll go into the debate after that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I thought it would be helpful to just go through the questions because there were 7 questions in the call-in. So I'll just go through question 1, 2, 3, and feel free to stop me at any time if it feels it's getting a bit lengthy or you want to clarify anything. Okay?
Yeah, I think let's go through the whole thing, then open up to questions from the committee first. Thank you.
Fine. Thank you. So the first question on the list was, why is the proposed commuted sum considered adequate compensation for the facilities not being provided under the Section 106 agreement? So the facilities originally planned under the Section 106 agreement included a recreational building with toilets, changing facilities and a club room. The council worked with the developer to try to find an end user for that building, but could not find one. With no end user, the building was not deliverable and the developer voluntarily offered to provide a commuted sum instead, which they didn't have to do. Residents of South Windham were surveyed and their preference was for that property to instead be landscaped with play equipment and the commuted sum to be used to enhance existing facilities.
Councillor, could you just slide your mic a bit closer to you if you don't mind? Thank you.
Is that better? Yeah. Right. So having done the survey, we knew that we needed to enhance existing facilities in Windham, not build a new building on that site. The developer costed the construction of that building that had been approved through the reserve matters application. Then they deducted planning and legal fees associated with the change, along with the cost of landscaping and enhancing the play park in the area where the building was supposed to go. So they worked out how much the building was going to cost, then subtracted everything else. Then the commuted sum is what was left over. The developer could have requested to remove the obligation entirely and provide no cash to us at all. Question 2. How did officers determine the most appropriate use of the commuted lump sum and how this would be split between facilities at Berwick Rec and Ketts Park? The deed of variation to the Section 106 allows the contribution to be used for community recreation and leisure facilities anywhere in the Wymondham parish, rather than pre-committing it to one site or project. The residents surveyed overwhelmingly selected Ketts Park as the facility they use the most. It was therefore agreed between officers and cabinet members that it would be appropriate for a significant portion of those funds to go to enhancing the residents' preferred facility, especially as this site provides public toilets, changing rooms, which are free for the community to access, alongside the cafe space, picnic tables, sports facilities, etc. The site is also staffed, meaning first aid trained individuals are on hand in the event of an incident. At Ketts Park, the proposed site enhancements would mostly be paid for by South Norfolk Council and other external funders, with 10% of that project cost coming in from the Section 106. Cabinet members had discussed with officers regarding a bidding process for a portion of the Section 106 for other sites in Wymondham, but the Wymondham Town Councillors made it clear that they wanted a significant portion of the sum to go to Berwick Recreation Ground. It was therefore decided to split the funds in this way, with 250,000 matching the 250 which the Town Council had themselves set aside from SIL for the Berwick Rec project. This means that approximately 25% of their total project cost would be covered by this commuted sum allocation, with the Town Council having identified a number of other funding sources they could approach for phase 2 of their project. Question 3. Why was the fully costed business plan from the Town Council on the proposed use of Section 106 money for Berwick completely ignored? Having reviewed the documents sent by the Town Council about the Berwick Rec project, it was decided 250,000 was an appropriate sum to allocate to the project for the reasons I've already outlined. Question 4. What evidence is there to suggest that an enhanced Ketts Park would be used by residents of Sealfield, in particular from Alders and Birchgate developments, which is where the Section 106 was destined for? This question we've talked about a little bit already, but in the scrutiny report, you can see the Sealfield resident survey. 67% of respondents said they regularly use Ketts Park. In answer to question 7, 53% said they wanted additional children's activities, which might include soft play, indoor play, etc. Question 5. What evidence is there to suggest that an enhanced Ketts Park will be financially viable and deliverable in the expected lifetime of the council? The council took over an operation of Ketts Park from Wymondham Town Council in 2018 on a 21-year lease. This has already facilitated significant outside investment and improvements, including a 3G football pitch, tennis courts improvements, netball court, grass pitch improvements, fitness courses being offered in the sports hall, and a number of other things. The current proposals are designed to improve the commercial sustainability of the site and meet the identified strategic need for more sports and leisure facilities in the area. The current modelling indicates that the proposals will generate a revenue surplus of circa £140,000 per year, which would bring a capital investment return in 18 years. This increases the footfall at the site to 150,000 visits per year and an annual social value increase to 534,000 per year. The current indicative contractor programme shows a completion date in mid-April 2027 for the works at Ketts Park buildings, and the second 3G pitch finishing in September 27. A briefing on the details of the project plan and indicative costs will be presented to the Health and Leisure Committee in March. I don't want to go down too many specific financial figures in a public meeting at the moment, if that's okay. Question 6. Why is the council planning to ignore its usual policy on Section 106 funds, particularly in reference to guidelines for recreation provision in new residential developments, September 2018? Those guidelines for recreation provision are related to open space and play areas on new builds, not to community buildings. Because the original Section 106 was for a building, the guidelines are not relevant in this case. The deed of variation broadened the eligibility of the original agreement to include community recreation and leisure facilities. The council is not ignoring a policy, but rather a policy doesn't apply on this particular instance. Last question, 7. What consents are required to allow the development of Ketts Park, in particular given the landlord is Wymondham Town Council? Currently, there are 13 years, 8 months remaining on the lease with Wymondham Town Council. Clause 15 of that lease requires the consent of Wymondham Town Council to undertake any alterations to that site. In principle, conversations have already taken place with members of WTC in December 24. They confirmed they were open to agreeing a new long-term lease arrangement with the council of 25 years or more. The Town Council formed a Ketts Park lease working group. Further updates were provided to the Town Clerk in March 25 and December 25. In general, the whole business case of Ketts Park will be presented in due course, as normal, to Cabinet and to the committees. So, just to summarise, Cabinet members and officers agreed that the commuted sum from Silfield 106 agreement is appropriately split, with £250,000 allocated to the £1 million project at Berwick Rec and £427,758.46p allocated to the £4 million project at Ketts Park. The allocation took into account the residence survey, sport and leisure demand analysis, and the project outlines and business cases for both sites. Both sites are in South Windham Ward, and both projects will benefit the residents' health and well-being in many ways. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Carsook. Is Mr. Courtier feel you're going to lead from the officer's point of view? Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. And in fairness, I'm not going to say a huge amount. From an officer's point of view, there's obviously the initial test of this decision is, does this proposed split of allocation comply with the original deed of variation and the wording of that variation? And the simple answer is yes, both proposed allocations do. In terms of the actual split of the allocation, which is at the heart of the conversation, the discussion today, it's worth saying both these projects are brilliant. They add significant and beneficial community facilities, and we'd want to see them delivered. But ultimately, the money that arose from the deed of variation, the Section 106, the commuted sum from the developer, is passed to South Norfolk, and as a council, it is the responsibility of the council to then allocate that as it sees fit in accordance with the wording of the deed of variation. The ultimate split was ultimately a cabinet decision, but then the question is, well, is that a perverse split? Well, in an officer's perspective, then it's not. You can look at that justification on a number of ways. You could say, well, the overall cost of either project or the overall footfall in the respective areas. You can understand why a greater proportion of the allocation is going to Ketts Park. I'm not making any further judgment on that because ultimately you could argue a whole variety of different splits, but it is justifiable. It's not a perverse decision. The other points I'd make in terms of just the discussion for scrutiny today is there's a real risk that we get into the detail of the merits of each business case or proposed business case, the details of what's being proposed on either site, the delivery of either project. At this point in time, my view is that the scrutiny should be at that higher level of the generic split rather than the detailed merits of either case, which will come forward via both councils in due course. My final point is, this is not the sole source of funding for either of these projects, and there are other sources of funding that can be accessed in this area. So whilst, as I say, both projects are excellent, we want to see them delivered, but nor is this Section 106 funding the be-all and end-all for either project.
Okay, that's really helpful. Simon, do you want to talk now or be on standby for questions?
Wrong one. I'll just be there to stand by questions. I think the points I would have made have already been made. Thank you.
Okay, right. So we're now going to throw this open to the committee first to make points and ask questions. Then we'll go to the wider people in the room. So who wants to kick off on this one? Yeah, Councillor Pearl.
I think Councillor Carsook's actually already covered my first question, which was going to be about which ward Ketts Park is actually in, because I've heard two councillors now tell me that the opposite suggested it had a different ward to Silfield. Can I, though, just narrow down on a particular point that's raised within the calling, which is the legal risks of, so it's the renegotiating the Section 106 agreement and the legal risks given the proposal is inconsistent, etc., etc. When I was at school, a deed could be varied or discharged by another deed, and for planning obligations there was a particular provision in Section 106A Is that still the case, and are we confident that that's all being complied with in this instance?
Okay, Phil, is that okay? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm satisfied that the deed of variation is robust legally, is sound legally, and can be relied upon.
Okay, still with you, Councillor, if you want to come back on that? No, okay, and who else wants to make a point or ask a question? Councillor Resin, thank you.
Okay, I've got a few questions actually. So just, can you confirm to me whether the landscaping works on the Silfield site that were the preference of the local community, where are they being paid from, and are they being carried out?
Okay, thank you.
As far as I understand, and you'll have to forgive me because I've not been the case officer, as you'll appreciate, for that case, the landscaping works will be absorbed by the developer in terms of the cost of them. Whether they've been carried out or not, I don't know. My apologies.
Okay, still with you, sir?
So just confirm, those costs are outside the 667,000?
They are, that is correct.
Okay, all right. So, second question. I understand there's been a survey. Have you got information about the demographics of those who responded for me, please? Because I would like to know the proportion of adults, and I'd like to know the proportion of young people that responded in that survey, and what efforts particularly were made to take the views of young people.
Yeah, I don't have that information. I don't have that breakdown in front of me. Whether we do hold that, I don't know.
We haven't got that in the room, have we, from anyone?
There is actually.
Okay, still with you, Phil. Yeah.
Yeah, and no, carry on. I may make a further point in a minute.
Good. Yeah.
Is it appropriate to ask Councillor Carlsop to ask what the survey said in terms of what young people want?
To be honest, I wasn't part of this as a case officer at the time the survey was done, so if I don't have the demographics in part of the scrutiny pack, I couldn't tell you. I know that officers do tend to make an effort to go out and seek out young people's voices, but often if you're putting, I think we put 1,500 by post into the ward, so it wasn't like surveying Central Windham, or specifically into South Windham, with letters delivered to those houses to answer the survey. So if the parent of a young person answers, you know, that would cover to some extent what young people are looking to see, I would hope.
Okay, so before I bring Daniel in, so a good coverage, the normal disproportionate adult response, it sounds like. I'll bring Daniel in, then come back to that.
No, I was just going to...
Can I just bring Daniel in first? He had his hand up thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasise that irrespective of the individual breakdown of the survey, it did have 723 responses in the Silfield poll district currently has just shy of 3,000 residents, and it probably had considerably less than that at the time the survey was carried out. By any stretch of the imagination, that's a phenomenal response rate for any kind of local government consultation.
Okay, that's really helpful. Terry, then we'll come back.
Well, it was only just to, as a matter of fact, within the document in the papers, which is the summary of the resident survey, there is a chart there which actually talks to the household composition in the responses. Now that, you know, because someone in the age 35 to 54 answered the survey, I think it's impossible to know whether they're answering on behalf of a 10-year-old child or a 70-year-old grandmother.
Okay, that's really helpful. Back with you, Councillor Rosen.
So could you tell me what consideration was given to the balance of facilities in Windham in terms of what is free and what is chargeable, and how that particularly affects young people who don't have the income to book the 3G pitch, for instance? And what I know we subsidise for low-income families at the leisure centres, but beyond that, I am concerned about the balance between free play facilities and chargeable facilities. I'd like to know what consideration was given to that.
Okay, can I throw that to? Do you want to come in first, Councillor Carsick or Phil?
Let me.
Okay, let's go do it that way. Thank you.
Apologies. Let me just make an overarching comment. And again, when you look at the deed of variation, it's not explicit. Maybe a fault of the deed of variation, but it's not explicit in terms of who should be the beneficiary of this commuted sum. It doesn't say young people, it doesn't say old people, it doesn't say paying, it doesn't say free. It is a very generic deed of variation. It's not unusual, but I'm not being flippant when I say I don't know what the breakdown of those respondents were. But in terms of an officer's decision, it's not relevant because the deed of variation doesn't direct us one way or the other. And that's just as a generic point, but I'll let Councillor Castle respond.
Thanks very much. Yeah, please.
Yeah, in terms of Ketts Park, it's a mixed site. So there are both free to access facilities and paid to access facilities. So, for example, the tennis courts, you pay to use those. The football pitches, people pay to use those. We do try and offer as low cost as possible memberships, subsidised activities, various different things to make those accessible. But the free to access part of the Ketts Park proposed project, that is one of the main reasons I was quite keen to see some of this Section 106 added into it, because to be able to justify adding in a 1 kilometre accessible path around the site so that people can, say small children can learn to cycle around it, people can use it to do couch to 5k, do 5 laps of a 1k path, having prams able to access the woodland path at the back of the park without shaken baby syndrome. To be honest, it's quite difficult. It's a very muddy park. So to be able to have it a bit more like Eaton Park, where you can use the full perimeter of the site to deliver that path, this Section 106 would go a long way to that, as well as public toilets, changing facilities, etc. I do understand there are some children who wouldn't pay to use the 3G pitch, but they can play football for free on the grass. Most of the time it's quite a large site, so they still have access to the toilets, and there's also a play area which the town council looks after. There's a woodland at the back. People can use those toilet facilities, for example, as whilst they're doing their free activities in a park. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate the questions, appreciate the answers. Still with you, sir.
So just going back to you, Phil, appreciate it's not specific, but then I think that means it's up to the council to decide what is the best way to use it, as you've identified. And I think we should be taking into account the needs of different parts of the community in Wyndham, and I think there is an equalities issue here. And I'm not convinced that the equalities impact assessment has been done correctly on this particular report, because I don't think that sufficient account has been taken of the needs of young people in Wyndham who suffer from a very limited supply of free play. I mean, yes, they can play football at Ketts Park, but not when it's being used by the football club, which is most of the weekend. So you've got quite a restricted amount of free play space. Not about free play, I'm actually talking about not just free cost. I'm talking about an environment that is not too structured, that does provide opportunities for them to play as they wish to. And those are very much part of the proposals for Berwick Park. And I think that at the moment, we've got some really great investment by the council in things like Pride in Places paying for Rothbury Park to be improved. But that is mostly adult focused. There are some small improvements to the play area. I know that there's been some improvements to a small playground up at Williams Park. Forget the full name of it. Williams, sorry?
Close.
Williams Close, that's it. I was thinking of Williams Way, I'm getting confused. So, you know, we are investing in things both for the younger children and for adults. But I do think that we've got a gap in Wyndham at the moment for children who need to be playing more independently, need to be playing with more risk. And the kind of facilities that we're suggesting should be at Berwick Park.
Okay,
I do feel that the way this report has been constructed, I think it needs to go back to Cabinet for some more consideration.
Okay, you made some strong points there. Do you want a response on the equalities part of the impact assessment? Is that all right, Phil?
Yeah, it is. I find myself vehemently agreeing with you on many of the points that you are making. We want to see these projects delivered. I think it's worth noting that this allocation of funds and the split that is being proposed neither enables both projects to go ahead in entirety, nor does it prevent both projects going ahead in, prevent either of those projects going ahead. they make significant contributions to both projects to be delivered in future. In fact, I would argue, and there's a danger I'm going to go and refer to Beaton's cases, which I've said we shouldn't necessarily delve into. But with the match funding from Wyndham, then actually the first phase of the Berwick Park scheme is delivered. Forgive me, short of about £65,000, I think, from recollection. So the first phase is £565,000, providing with it, pump track, first phase of the skate park, a number of other facilities there. It is a great scheme, and we want it all to be delivered. But again, I come back to the point of, was this a perverse decision by Cabinet that has literally blocked one scheme and enabled another scheme to go ahead? No, it's not. It has given a proportionate amount of funding to both schemes, and more money will need to be raised from other sources to deliver those schemes. So I vehemently agree with the point that we need better resources, and we need better resources for young people. But this allocation, whilst if it's reallocated in a different split, that's fine. But nor can we argue, in my mind, that this current split is perverse or a poor outcome. It will enable both schemes, hopefully, to be delivered and contributes a significant proportion of funding to both schemes.
Okay, thanks, Phil. I'll go to Councillor Elmer, then back to Councillor Rosen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I absolutely accept Councillor Rosen's point, and there would be a lot of validity to it were we stop preventing a free scheme from going forward. But as we've already alluded to, Ketts Park is a mixed scheme, mixed free, mixed pay, and Berwick Road is a free scheme. And if you look at the actual proportions of the funding for Berwick Rec, as Councillor Carsock has already alluded to, the Section 106 money would account for about 25% of the overall cost. On Ketts Park, that's only 10%. So we're already allocating a higher proportion of the overall cost of the project for the free element.
Okay, that's helpful. Still with you, Councillor?
Yeah, okay, so grateful for the responses, and I appreciate that actually what everyone's trying to do is deliver two schemes. And what I'm also conscious that this is schemes that are capital projects, and we've got a capital programme that may have some flexibility within it, and we may be able to revisit these things. I think that just in terms of this particular sum, though, the 667, I think that I would suggest to Cabinet, and I would like this to be one of our recommendations, Jeremy, I'd like to suggest that they reconsider the proportions, and that there's an increase in the proportion given to Berwick, and that we look at the capital programme and seek to find some alternative way of funding the full value of the Ketts Park, particularly given it's only 10% that's coming from this Silfield. I think that's important because this council's reputation does depend on decisions like this, and I think that I know young people don't vote, but they may be voting soon if we manage to get those proposals through. And I think that whether they vote or not, I think they deserve to have their needs taken into account. And I think that I agree that the decision's not perverse, but I think there could be a better decision. And what I would like is Cabinet to go back and see if there's a way they can allocate more money to Berwick and find a different way of funding the Ketts Park.
Okay, that's helpful. Do you want a response on that final point?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your contribution. Councillor Webber.
I'd like to kick off by going down a completely different line, if you don't mind. I'm worried. I visited the area yesterday just to remind myself what it will look like. I'm worried that the residents of Silfield, particularly the new residents in these 1,000 houses, in my neck of the woods, that's a large village. These new houses are being shortchanged by both these proposals. The one thing the survey proved is that on this tiny piece of land, it's relatively small, people don't want to see a community building. I think that came through loudly and clearly. But it's also clear that this community building, as initially proposed, was going to include changing rooms, etc., etc. And actually, it was going to be the focal point for a much wider sports area. Now, I believe Sports England say that people will use frequently sports areas that are within half a mile of their house. They can walk, they can cycle. So we have a village here that could make more use of this big open space at Silfield. And the question is, what are the constraints on that? Why isn't some of this investment going to improving the facilities for people that actually live in Silfield?
Okay, no, you made a good point there about the ambition and scale, I think.
Yeah, I would also say that independent travel for, I don't know, in my confines, for children under the age of 16, they're not going to be walking or cycling to Berwick Road or Ketts Park if they live in this particular area. I wouldn't particularly want my kids doing that because there's no good routes.
The distance for young people is an important point.
Sorry. I think probably my question is both to Phil and Kim, but it's probably also to the people here from Wyndham.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they'll comment later on. But questions to Daniel. Is that okay about that? I think about the ambition, the scale, particularly the distance factor around young people. I'll come back to you, sir.
I have a lot of sympathy with what Councillor Webber is saying, actually. I think we have to be realistic about what can be delivered in certain timescales, but I will say it was actually my original intention to part fund Ketts Park and then to use the balance as a form of super CAF, as it were, specifically for the residents of Silfield. It was only following the lobbying of the town councillors and district councillors from Wyndham that I converted that Silfield money into an allocation for Berwick Rec.
Okay, that's really helpful. Councillor, is this a point on Councillor Webber's question? Yep.
Yeah, I think it just needs a correction. The young people of Silfield mostly go to school in Wyndham, the other side of the railway bridge. So they are very used to walking and cycling into the area where Berwick Park is and also where Ketts Park is.
Okay, that's a good bit.
That's the distance they do every day to school.
Okay, that's a good bit of context. Right, still with you, Jim. Do you want to come back on that or any further points or questions?
I'd also be interested if the Wyndham group have anything to contribute on that.
I would have to finish with the councillors first and then ask the Wyndham group to come in at that point. Yeah, sorry to be a bit procedural there.
The other observation I would make is that neither of these projects have got planning permission. Neither of the projects is fully funded. It seems actually premature to agree what the allocation of funding to either of them is. And to be honest, my preference would we allocate it to a Wyndham fund, and for all allocations from the fund to be mutually agreed by the town council and SNC, and if they can't agree, that a paper comes back to council for us to debate it there.
Okay, can we have a response to that suggestion? Phil, do you want to go? Yeah.
I can just, again, there's a counter proposal. It's not my place to comment one way or the other on that. I think my only comment would be, it's not unusual to allocate funding to schemes where there is no planning permission. You need to have an allocation. You need a pot to kickstart a scheme. That is common practice. I won't comment because it's not my place on the counter.
No, but that's really helpful context. Councillor Elmer.
I do appreciate the suggestion. I'm sure the members of Wyndham Town Council won't mind me saying this, but I think there is a history where SNC and WTC do not always necessarily see eye to eye on every matter, and I think were we to create a pot that would require joint drawdown, we might just end up in a stalemate with each other for a very long time.
Okay, is that on this point, Michael?
It is actually, and I can assure Daniel that it's a very different town council experience now. I mean, you may have noticed a significant change at the town council office in the last year or so, and I think that is very relevant in terms of the working at officer level. And certainly, we feel at the town council that it is much easier now to have discussions with South Norfolk about these. I see nodding from.
Yeah. You were never going to get away with that, John. Right, Suzanne's nodding, yeah.
So I would absolutely apologise for the historic difficulties between Wyndham Town Council and South Norfolk District, but I would pretty much guarantee that we can make progress these days.
Thank you. Phil, on this point, still Jim's point.
When you say on this point, I'm not going to engage in a conversation between the relationship between the. As far as I'm concerned, they are both doing a wonderful job and will deliver great projects. My only comment is in my experience, the certainty of funding. However, you know, even if that's not as much as you initially had hoped for, whoever it is, the certainty of funding gives much greater weight in trying to then lever in additional funding. An unknown pot that could be 0, it could be 600, leaves enough of an uncertainty sometimes. That would be my only other comment.
Okay, that's helpful. Jim, any final points or come back? You happy? Okay. Anyone else on the committee would like to speak or ask questions? Yeah, Councillor Pearl.
Firstly, it's just a few points that come out of Councillor Webber and Councillor Rosen sort of exchange there. Councillor Rosen makes the point that all the kids in Silfield do the journey every day to up into Wyndham to the high school. I have to say the experience of my residents in Folly Road is that the kids aren't walking. And sadly, even sort of 12, 13, 14-year-olds often do not walk to school these days on that particular distance. There was also the point being made about taking into account the needs of young people, etc. I'm the father of a 15-year-old. I have to say she shows no inclination whatsoever to trek down to Rec. And now I understand that there's county lines activity there. I think I wouldn't let her anyway. What I would like to just sort of raise a couple of questions about, though, is Councillor Webber led very much on the concept of the residents of Silfield being short-changed. If I go through the original 2014 deed, I can see provision for affordable housing. I can see provision for a primary school within the Red Line, which has recently opened and taken the strain off the other schools in Wyndham. Provision for the high school, provision for library services, provision even for money even for the.
Can I press you to get to a point here, sir?
Of course, for the sixth Thorn roundabout. Surely the point of these planning obligations is to mitigate the impact as a whole from this massive development. There were 600 objections to the two original applications for outline permission. It was not popular, and surely the point of this mitigation is it should benefit the people of Wyndham as a whole, not any particular subsection like residents of Silfield.
Okay, do you want a response on that? Yeah, just the wider geographical area beyond Silfield, and if they've been equally fairly served.
I have to say I haven't read the 2014 original document.
You have?
Yeah, I think Phil sort of already covered the deed of variation, and it's in general for sports and recreation facilities for the parish of Wyndham is the current line we are following, and Scrutiny is considering today whether our split of that is an okay or perverse decision on that basis. So.
Yeah, we've got to be careful not to go too deep. Are you happy that that point's been made, sir? Is this on this point, Jim? Yeah.
I think if you look through all of the documentation, I looked through most of it, yes, the wording is the parish of Wyndham, but the focus is very much on Silfield, all the way through. And if it's changed in the most recent deed of variation, that's because maybe it shouldn't have done. You know, and it's very clear from the actual proposal submitted that this was going to be a relatively sporty area. There's a lot of land there in aggregate, with proper changing rooms and facilities. So, to allocate it to Ketts Park is, or indeed Bright Road, is actually extremely different to the underlying thesis when these houses were originally approved.
Okay, I think we're in danger of going over the same ground here. Any further points or questions, Councillor? Just do you mic, please, Jim, if you don't mind.
If I may, and I understand it's annoying you, but if we go back to the purpose of planning obligations, they are to mitigate the impact of a development, whether that's in the Town and Country Planning Act, the NPPF, or indeed policy WIM 3 in the Wyndham Area Action Plan. And that later policy is very clear that the mitigation is for the for anybody impacted across the town and not merely the residents of Stillfield.
Okay, I think that point's been made, and I thank you for it. Anyone else on the committee would like to make points? I beg your pardon, sorry. I'll bring Terry and then over to you, Councillor Easter. Thank you.
If I may, I'd just like to make some generic observations about consistency. Obviously, every S106 agreement has its own peculiarities and relates to its own environment, obviously. But in terms of consistency, and I have to be careful here because in my experience, I have a very parallel situation happening in my ward, and there the conclusions seem to have come quite differently. They start off from the same position of requiring a community centre, and residents don't want it, and what else do you do as a consequence? Now, in our case, that parallel is that hard to reach an agreement with the developer about the valuation of an S106 agreement, but and in our case, it's now subject to a planning application, so that's why I need to be careful about that. But there, the answer is very much that we want to, the money being spent within the development is less than the amount, the commuted sum, and what happens to the difference. And the difference in this case seems without any dispute to be going to the town council. Now that's an interesting comparison, so that's a consistency one. The other one, specifically on the Silfield one that I'm interested in, is we're talking very much of a binary issue, Browick Park versus Ketts Park. Actually, I don't know exactly what's happening within the Silfield development, but it's a tertiary issue, because whatever is happening in terms of open spaces, etc., they need maintenance going forward. And one of the elements that we often talk about within S106 is an element of time going forwards in terms of an amount of money being set aside for the ongoing costs associated with that development. So in this case, we haven't discussed in this conversation at all any element of the cost of maintenance over, say, a 10-year period for what is actually happening specifically within Silfield. So I'm interested in opening that debate up to, addressing it as a tertiary issue rather than a binary issue. I'd like some comment on that, please.
Okay, let's not get too deep into the technicalities there, but I think it's a fair point. So a quick response to that.
I'm not interested in understanding what the Browick plan is, or the Ketts Park plan, just how allocation is made as a principle, and whether enough information was available before Cabinet made that decision.
Okay, response on that, Councillor Carso, is that okay?
I think Phil would probably be better, because you're sort of asking about the landscaped area in the Silfield development and what provision is there. I believe it's a management company that deals with it, but Phil would know better than me.
Quick answer on this, I think, Phil.
I don't know details again, my apologies, but it's normal, and I understand for Silfield that will come under a management company that is effectively funded by residents to then maintain those spaces.
Okay, still with you, Terry.
I think just a comment, it's not specific to this application, but it has a broader point. If South Norfolk has a project and it continues to look after it, any ongoing gap between revenue and income is the responsibility currently of every resident of South Norfolk via the precept. If the town council takes responsibility and doesn't put it specifically into the development, it becomes the responsibility for all the residents of Wymondham. If the investment is made in the specific location of the development, then either depends upon the town council and depends upon the overall scenario. Either the residents of Wymondham pick up that shortfall over the coming years, or the residents of the specific Silfield pick it up through a management company. That's a fundamental weakness of planning, of S106 where we stand today, and I'm not proposing this.
No, that's fine. Do you want? Is that you making a point, or do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, but the point I'm making is there is an implication beyond the residents of Wymondham in terms of what decision Cabinet makes on a subject like this.
Okay, that's a point made. Thank you, Councillor Easter.
I've listened intently to what's been said today, and the survey form that was sent out to 1,500 houses came back and said they didn't want a community centre, and the only option appears that they were asked, did they want it landscaped? Were they ever asked if they wanted other sports facilities on that site, because it's quite large, which they may have wanted?
Okay, get a response on that. So some of the detailed questions around the survey.
The simple answer is I don't know. Again, at this point in time, and again, forgive me, because in terms of scrutiny in the discussion now, it's not necessarily revisiting what that first decision was, which then created a commuted sum for Wymondham, which then led us to the allocation split. But that sort of sense of, well, let's revisit and go back, and actually could we have secured some recreation facilities within Sealfield and the Sealfield development at that time, was almost at the time that we were negotiating the original deed of variation, which, as I understand it, and I am talking off the top of my head, there was an acceptance and a desire that that would be landscaped and that the funding would then go to a wider Wymondham use. The important wording is, because I don't, again, want to open up discussion, the wording of the deed of variation does allow for it to be for Wymondham, but accessible for residents of the development. So there's still an accessibility. Can you walk and cycle to both Berwick Road and Ketts Park? As far as we're concerned, yes, you can. But how desirable that would be a different thing. But the definition does allow for accessibility for residents of that development.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Still with you, James?
So that money could have been spent in Sealfield to develop recreational activities, skate park, climbing frame, etc. But the decision was made to split it across the whole of Wymondham. Is that correct?
We accept that that's the point in principle, yeah, I think so, yeah. Okay, anyone else on the committee want to make a point or ask questions? I'll give you another chance later on as well. I'm keen to move it on to the beyond committee. Is it a short one, sir?
On Councillor Easter's point about, I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong from the back here, I'm not sure whether you're going to...
Can you go through the chair, please?
I'm not sure we're going to give councillors another chance to speak,
We
Councillor
are.
Jackson in particular, in which case you'll be able to answer the question about the sporting facilities better than I will.
Okay, right, I'm now going to go to the people who brought the calling in, basically. So it's your chance to ask questions of the portfolio holders and the officers.
Thanks, Chair. Actually, I'd like to address a couple of Councillor Webber's points about the not having a formal football pitch on the area where the development is. The reason why is because it was for a cricket pitch and a football pitch, but they were not full size. And also, once the people moved into that development, they did not want those pitches there. To also bring those pitches up to scratch, they would have to have taken off the surface of the grass that's there now. They would have had to skim off all the stones, so it would have been prohibitive to even do that. But irrespective of that, the residents that came in did not want those pitches, and the community building was so that they would have changing rooms for those facilities. So it made sense not to have that, because you haven't got the pitches there either. As for planning permission, we have submitted our planning permission for Berwick, and here it is. Or rather, this is the business case for it. For some reason, planners here at South Norfolk have delayed this decision and have asked for an extension, and we don't know why that is. So it's been held up in planning for some reason. The other point I wanted to make was the distance. To Berwick, it's 1.2 miles. To Ketts, it's 1.9. Kids might walk there and back for 2 miles. They might not do it for 4 miles. So this is the nearest facility for the youth of Sealfield in this development. This is the nearest recreation they will have. informally, they might play football on that big bit of green that was going to be cricket pitches and a football pitch, but they would rather go into town, and Browick is ideally suited for that sort of purpose. As for the landscaping and other things like that, we've got the chair of the Residents Association here with us, Gary, and I'm sure that he can answer a few things as well. Thank you.
Okay, is there any, you made some strong points there. Is there any specific questions to a portfolio holder or an officer? We could ask for a general response if you prefer.
Well, I would like to know why our planning permission has been held up, for example.
You can't do that here, we're not scrutinising that.
Okay.
Okay, Tom? Yeah, please do. Thanks, Suzanne.
Just a few questions, please. I want to know why the wording was for the 250,000 up to rather than at least, because up to assumes any amount up to, so it could be £1,000. So why was the wording not used at least?
Okay, comment on that from someone? Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Daniel.
I'll let Phil come in, but our intention is for it to be 250,000.
Okay, Phil, do you want to come in?
I've got nothing to add to that.
That's fine. Still with you, miss.
Okay.
But I think I'm in school, so miss.
The other
Apologies,
point was,
councillor.
This Silfield is within my ward, and one thing I'll say, it is quite isolated. There are very little facilities there. And I've been involved in a battle that's taken over 3 years on that estate to get some of the little roads built by the developers finished. After 3 years, they just had rough roads. So I want to pick up on Councillor Rosen's point about the landscaping. Can you tell me the process to make sure that landscaping actually happens? Who has the power to make that happen?
Okay, yeah, let's have a quick one on that. Thanks, Phil.
And again, I appreciate we're sort of veering outside of the realms of this conversation, but just in terms of, no, absolutely, I'm very happy to. Just in terms of responding to that point, the enforcement of the Section 106 deed of variation or the planning application would ultimately be down to the planning compliance team here. So this council still has control over that. Again, I don't know the relevant triggers for that landscape work to be carried out, but that would be ultimately our responsibility and our ability to enforce.
Okay, thank you. Still with you, councillor.
I wanted to go back to the spirit of the S106 financing and the purpose in terms of mitigating the impact of the development. When Councillor Carsock spoke, she's talked about it would be used for the commercial sustainability. And that really worries me, because I believe in a meeting we recently had, there was a huge amount of money being allocated for Ketts Park Leisure Centre. And this would be going into that ocean of money. Whereas, as we have said before, the facilities in Browick Road are free, and they're very different at the moment. The facilities are for cyclists, there's for skateboarders, there's a lot of land there, and the plans put lots of different facilities in a place where the people can walk to very easily and in less time. And I would disagree with the other councillor. I live very near the school. The majority of students walk in and things. So I would just like to go back to the spirit of this. Are we giving money to something that commercially helps sustain something that drips money, feeds it, and people have to pay to use it? Or are we giving to a facility which is free for people to use, and youths who have in the area who do not have the money to join the leisure centre? We know it's underused. They do not have the money to do it at the facilities. I cannot understand why this isn't at the foremost, to be giving something to the community that is free for community use. And all I can see that is free in Ketts Park is the field, parts of the field that you can't use, and a little play area, but there's very limited free facilities there.
Okay, can we get a response on that point about the extent to which the facilities planned are free to use? Thank you, Councillor Carsock.
Yes, as I said earlier, the part of the proposals for Ketts Park and why I wanted to use some of the Section 106 money out there is for those free-to-use facilities, like an accessible path, like provision of public toilets, even on Sundays and when people are using parks. I don't want to do a tit for tat on the two projects, but Berwick Rec doesn't provide any of those built facilities in that sense. But we are giving £250,000 to the Berwick Rec project, to that free to use facility. We are wanting to give 427,000 towards the Ketts Park project, which is only 10% of the total project cost. Every district council in this room endorsed the capital programme, which included 2.7 million towards the Ketts Park wider project. That is for the commercial side. That is for the 3G pitch, which has a revenue element to it, among the other things like the cafe expansion, etc. So in order to make that site sustainable, to pay back the investment made in capital, and to have those pitches and things available to the community, not just Wyndham people, but from wider beyond, the council does want to make those investments, but this bit of money from the Section 106 is for those free-to-use facilities at Ketts Park, as well as at Berwick Rec.
Yes, so you put good defence of this balance between free-to-use and revenue-generating projects. Still with you, Councillor? Are you happy with that?
I would just question that for a path when Moot Hill has had, which is behind Ketts Park, has had an investment, and a lot of their work is being is paths and accessibility to the site at the back. And I do walk across Ketts Park, and I don't think that that's a big an issue, because if you're doing accessible paths, you can no longer use the outdoor football. So I'd kind of question that use of money.
Okay. Is anyone else there would like to make a point or ask a question? Yes, sir. Yeah.
If I may, Chair, I'd like to answer a couple of questions that have come up that there didn't seem to be an answer for, or a lack of knowledge. With regard to the management company on the Alders and Birchgate is Giles Management. They were embedded by the builders and are difficult to remove, not that we necessarily want to. However, at the moment, because there has been no adoption of much of the site, or in fact any of it probably, Bovis and Taylor Wimpey, or Vestry and Taylor Wimpey as it is now, are paying the management fees. And as an individual owner there, I'm not paying anything and haven't paid yet. So that's the situation with that. With the situation...
You'll understand that's difficult for us to form a view on.
No, I understand. I'm just pointing out there seems to be a lack of knowledge about that. That's the situation as it stands. Bovis are still paying on my behalf, which is very nice of them. Thank you very much. The landscaping issues, although it was agreed by the residents that the landscaping would be done, or that's what they would like to be done, the original contract from the builders and the management company didn't incorporate that part of the site as such. So that would be new ground that the management company would have to maintain. So as far as I understand it, that they need to rethink the contract to incorporate what would be the new the development of the landscaping.
I'm just not sure if this is a decisive point about.
Well, I'm just pointing out there seemed to be a
no, you're free to make it, sir. But
and then my point would be, as a resident on this money, this 600 and something thousand pounds, only exists because of the development of the Alders and Birchgate site. I use the term to compensate. That's not really the right term, but the main recipients of the compensation should be the people that live in and around that Sealfield site. And the way the and I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that there's been anything wrong with the way the allocation has been done in a legal way. I disagree with the way the allocation has been done completely. It's convenient that the deed of variation is so ambiguous as to allow that to happen. And I really strongly feel...
So can we just be careful, because we don't impugn people's work in this committee?
I understand that. I'm not saying that, but I'm allowed to disagree with their decisions. I must be allowed to disagree. I think the vast majority of this free money that suddenly arrived should be given to the area in and around the Sealfield and the development, and because that's the only reason this money exists.
Yeah, I completely understand that point. Do you want a comment on that, a response?
If somebody would like to comment on that,
thank you
very much.
Yeah, that's a fair point to make, I think. Councillor Carnsick, thank you.
Thank you. I think a lot of people have that same opinion, that the actual site in question in Sealfield, which is right out near the A11 boundary where this building would have gone, it would have been nice to provide something on that piece of property. But I think the developers, the councils, took a long time to try to get anything to happen on that site, and there was no one coming forward who wanted to run it long term, whether that's sports facilities like Jim Webber mentioned, whether that's a building, you know, a village, a new village hall, anything. Literally no one was willing to take on that liability. So unless you have that, you can't deliver anything. And we, as Councillor Irma said, wanted to have a bidding process for Wyndham projects to take up that portion of the money, but the Wyndham Town Council has made it clear that Berwick Rec was the preferred project. So,
Okay, I think a strong point has elicited a strong response there. Still with you, sir?
I accept what's been said, albeit I disagree. Moving on from that, I strongly believe from where we are, Berwick is the closest potential facility that we can have if we don't use that massive, great big field at the front of our development. And I strongly feel that the majority of this money should be diverted to that project rather than to Ketts Park, which is in a better state, if that's the right way to say it, than Berwick is at the moment. Berwick's in desperate need, and it would turn into a fantastic facility for the young people of Wyndham, I think, and it's closer to where we are, to where the original money has come from. And that would be my point. Thank you very much.
You made that very strongly and eloquently, and we're grateful for that, and I'm sure it's been received as well. Did you want to come in there as well, make any points or questions?
I want to say a little something. Thank you for letting me contribute. I'm here representing the Youth Matters Youth Club I set up last September. Working directly with young people in Wyndham, I see firsthand how important the access, proximity and free facilities are. Many young people don't have the transport, so spaces within the walking distance really do matter. I also personally know some of the young people who are expecting these facilities to be built as part of this development. The reality is that time's moving quickly, and in a young person's life, when projects take years to happen or change direction, that the generation simply misses out. 2 or 3 years is a huge part in someone's adolescence, and sometimes whole groups of teenagers are getting forgotten whilst decisions take time, go back and forth, and so on. From a youth perspective, informal, inclusive and free spaces closest to where young people live will always have the greatest impact.
Okay, thank you. I mean, as someone who's a head teacher now, I genuinely deeply respect your commitment to the needs of young people, and I think it's fantastic to hear that voice raised here today. Okay, I'll do a final trawl through the committee if anyone's got any final comments or questions. Councillor Rosen.
Sorry, just I realise we're not trying to get into detail, but Councillor Carsott did mention the thorny issue of toilets. And one of the issues with toilets at Ketts Park at the moment is that they're only open when the leisure centre itself is open, you know, the cafe facility. So actually, I personally have experienced with my granddaughter not being able to use the facilities because they weren't open because it was the morning and we hadn't opened up yet. So is one of the benefits of the Ketts Park scheme going to be longer opening hours for the toilets, and if so, what are we being promised?
Well, it is very detailed, but let's have a look at that. Thank you.
my understanding is that the staff currently, so the town council staff have a key so that when they arrive in the morning at 9 o'clock, they can open our toilets, and then when the Ketts Park staff arrive, they then sort of take over that. I hope that's still true, but that was something I authorised them to do. So they should be open from at least 9 o'clock until sort of 9 p.m.
Okay.
Most days, including weekends.
It's quite a detailed one, but thank you for raising it. Thank you for responding.
Sorry, just to also add the. Sorry, Chair. Can I just add to that? Sorry.
You can. Thank you.
Just to add, obviously, the proposed development for Ketts Park would obviously change it from being only open from 2 o'clock till in the evening to opening earlier in the day as well. So it would operate as a full-time leisure centre rather than the part-time as it does operate now. Sorry, Chair.
No, not at all. That's good. Jim, did you have a final point there? Thank you.
Under the original section 106, as far as I can read it, there is around £1,900 per dwelling allocated for what is called, where's it gone? recreational space development. And I think that's across both areas. That's £1,000 properties to near enough £2,000 a property. That's £2 million. And that goes, I think, to the district council, really with none of the constraints I've talked about being used in Silfield, but to be used broadly within Wyndham we're talking about, within Wyndham for indoor and outdoor leisure facilities. So
Okay.
that strikes me that that's £2 million that has already gone to South Norfolk.
Right, Jim, I'm trusting you on the maths there. Can we have a response on that?
Again, my focus has been on the 677,000. Again, I'll go back to a point I made earlier, which is we are talking about the allocation of this commuted sum in lieu of the building. There are many other sources of funding, and there may well be other sources of Section 106 funding. There may well be, I guarantee there will be, sources of SIL funding for these projects. And again, to reiterate a point I've already made, this allocation is not a binary decision between shall we have Berwick Road or shall we have Ketts Park. This is about seeking to deliver and enable the delivery of both, building up funding packages, for both.
And the lower amount is a higher percentage of the overall cost. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Jim. You pressed that button. Go.
I did, yeah, I absolutely accept Phil's point. But the point is we have been given percentages in terms of we're putting more into Berwick Park, etc., and by bringing your attention to this matter, I'm suggesting those percentages themselves might be misleading. And I think one thing is clear is that more work needs to be done on this. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we can call them misleading in themselves. They make sense mathematically, but there is more funding available, and Phil's made that point throughout, I think. Okay, everyone okay on the committee? Right, thank you. Let's move to recommendations now. This will be tricky, I think, but let's see where we land. I've no idea where you want to land either, by the way, but we've got 3 potential recommendations, if I can draw your attention to those in front of us. We either endorse the executive's decision in the first place, or we refer the matter back for reconsideration. In doing so, we might suggest a different option is considered, and we've had one suggestion already from Councillor Rosen, or that the executive themselves carry out additional consultation or obtain more information. The final one's really unusual, that me or one of us is delegated to work with Daniel, or whoever Daniel delegates that to have a look at this outside of the meeting. So what are people's thoughts on that? Because we don't have a binary option in front of us here. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I appreciate, it is really actually encouraging, and I appreciate all the passion and the specific local knowledge, because I'm really grateful for the discussion today. But I have to say, from a slightly removed, which I would have always objective standpoint, my understanding here is the calling today is focused on was due process followed. That is our central, that's what we're centrally focusing on here today. Was due process followed in the allocation set out in the budget, a budget which every councillor in this room voted in favour of last week. So my proposal would be that we endorse what's already been agreed.
Okay, that's really helpful about our remit here, despite the passion and the interest and the really important contributions we've had. Okay, anyone else want to comment on the options in front of us here? So, Rosen.
Yeah, so unsurprisingly, I'm in favour of giving Cabinet a chance to reconsider this, looking more widely at the capital programme, looking at the realities of the timescales for delivering this, responding to what is clearly a lot of local feeling. And yes, we all voted for it last week, and you know, when we had group leader discussions about the budget, I was encouraged by the idea of 250,000 for this project. But I think what we can see is that there's a considerable amount of local feeling that actually this is not the right allocation. And I think we ought to, as councillors for whichever ward, but particularly as Cabinet, I think we ought to take the opportunity to go back and reconsider this and see whether there is a different allocation that can work and can reflect that local passion. Because I think that local passion is relevant. I'm not saying due process wasn't followed, although I do feel that actually there has not been sufficient account taken specifically of the views of young people So I do think there are some equalities issues with this, but I would accept it being referred back.
Okay, it really has been an excellent debate actually from start to finish. Right, Downey, have you got, do you want to come in there, Jonathan? Yeah. Framing our recommendations.
I was going to say my preference would be for number one to just confirm the decision. Failing that, I'd probably prefer option 3 for yourself to liaise with the cabinet. And the reason for that is that usual sort of paralysis of local government that we seem to sort of keep getting ourselves into. The monies for Berwick Road, for example, I checked the SIL returns on my way in. The monies that Wyndham Town Council has held for Berwick Road has been sat there for 4 years now. You know, at some point,
that's the evidence stage now, so
we have spades in the ground.
Okay, but let's just focus on the recommendation.
Made.
I suspect we can probably put a line through option 3 unless you're proposing it and you can get a seconder. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I don't sense an appetite for that. I'll do it in that order. Right. Not for the first time. Right. What we're looking for is a seconder.
Yeah. So, Chair, I would like to formally propose that we endorse what's already been agreed.
Okay. So,
if we're voting in order on these proposals, are we ending up accepting one by default, or are we voting on all of them? And how does that work then?
Well, my understanding from Sinead, do you want to come in there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So you need to first vote on whether you're willing to accept the recommendation from Cabinet or not. And then if that is obviously a not, then you need to decide, are you willing to refer the matter back to Cabinet with your reasons why?
Okay. Quite a big moment for us. This is good. So there's 8 of us voting here. So we've had a proposer and a seconder for recommendation 1. If we get 5 or more, that goes through. If we don't, we'll look at recommendation 2, which I'm sensing very strongly is going to be proposed and seconded in the room. Okay, show of hands, okay? So we are now voting on endorsing the executive's decision, which will then be implemented. Okay, big moment there. Show of hands, please.
That's 4, Chair. That's 4 as well, Chair, so it's Chair's casting vote.
I'm going to vote against the recommendation 1. So we're now looking for a proposer and seconder for the second recommendation. Councillor Rosen, are you happy to propose? Okay, we need a seconder. Councillor Webber, thank you. We're now looking for a majority on Okay, I'm quite happy with how that stands now, rather than open up to a big conversation on it. But do you want to come in there, Councillor Rosen?
Are we trying to clarify what I'm asking Cabinet to do? Yeah. Okay, so I'm asking Cabinet to reconsider the decision in terms of the allocation of the 667,000, exploring other options within the capital programme to see if the sum available for Berwick Park can be increased to reflect the local passion and concern about the current decision.
And just for the benefit of the people in the room, we have no executive power. All we can do is ask the Cabinet we can make recommendations to Cabinet. That's our function here, so that's what we're looking at doing. Okay, is that a clear enough proposal? Can you read it back, do you mind? Oh, yeah, we have to. I haven't wrote it down. Okay, did everyone hear that? Okay, that's fine. So it's about reconsidering the proportions and possibly looking at the capital budget as well. Okay, right. Are those in?
Lucy's got it, Chair, if you would like it.
I wouldn't mind, yeah.
Okay, so we've got to reconsider the decision in terms of the allocation, exploring other options in the capital programme to see if the Berwick Road element can be increased to reflect local will and local passion.
Okay, show of hands. In favour?
That's
Okay.
4 in favour, Chair.
Right, I'm going to put it through on a casting vote.
Well, against, is there any against? Casting vote, Chair.
Yeah, okay. I think there's been enough in the room to send it back and have another look, and I'm really grateful to everyone for their contributions. It's been absolutely fantastic, actually. I think I'll put a